Thank you very much. That was a canonic study by Telemann. It's something that we like to do. It just keeps us in good shape rhythmically. First of all, I think we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and how we reached where we are. We've been amazed as we've travelled around America. We had a bit of free time, so we went around some of the junior high schools around in Texas there. And the facility that the kids have in America to play brass instruments, I was just flabbergasted by it. You know, the band halls, the big 12-gear tuning machines and metronomes, racks and racks of instruments. The question that me and Nick asked ourselves when we were leaving every one of those schools was why there aren't more community bands. Where did all those kids go when they finish school? Because back home in England, we don't have any of these programs in the schools. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I wish we could have them. But over the last 15 years, there's been a few schools that have had peripatetic teachers going in, but mainly not. And so that's the system we've come up with is purely and simply community bands, where a town has had a band. Just imagine like a typical sort of German band, and our father played the euphonium in those bands, and he taught us how to play the instrument from that. We had no formal educational training whatsoever.
And really, when we're talking about this, it's a good point to actually bring you back to the very beginning in Britain, which was when, on the turn of the Industrial Revolution, where all the industry was coming up everywhere in Britain, in a very small area, they decided it was better that they knew where all their employees were going to be at night, because if they weren't, then they'd be in the pubs and having a good drink. So what they decided to do was most actually industries, cities, towns, all had their own brass bands. What they would do is get a room in the actual factory or the colliery. They would get 25 chairs, they would buy a set of music stands, and they would engage and pay a conductor to actually run the band. From there, the conductor would look for some soloists to sit on the cornet, euphonium, trombone and tenor horn chairs to build his band around. And the idea was then that he would give them a job. He would actually even give them a house to live in as long as they played in his brass band. And from there, it's even kept on going right up to today.
And so the expertise of playing a brass instrument was really passed down from father to son. And that is incidentally, for the euphonium players here, why the euphonium plays predominantly in the treble clef. Because, you know, Dad might well have started on cornet but as he gets older and loses all his teeth, he lands up on the tuba. I'm not joking, that is the truth.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I said, when you're up to today now, we still have the brass bands. About 15 years ago, there was as many as 80,000 to 100,000 brass bands in Britain. Now it's dropped a little, probably about 70,000 to today's time. But they're all amateur. But not to be misled, I think that certainly the top 20 bands in Britain are really of a very high professional standard.
Well, if you just said that the London Symphony Orchestra, the military bands, BBC Symphony Orchestra, all of the best orchestras and military bands in England take their professional brass players, not from the music colleges, usually. Biggest percentage comes from the brass bands. Because like the corner players are used to playing arrangements, transcriptions, where they've been playing the fiddle parts. And so I mean, like Nicholas was saying, the standard is absolutely phenomenal. With some of the players are unbelievable.
And even still talking about that same point, that it wasn't a case that when they finished on principal cornet at, say, Black Dyke Mills Band, that they then went to college for a few months or a year and then went to one of the best orchestras in the world. They actually moved from principal cornet to principal trumpet at the London Symphony. And that has actually been done on the last 3 generations. I'm not sure whether it could be done now. I don't know whether perhaps they're as good. But certainly, those trumpet players have actually been phenomenal.
And Nick and I started playing when we were about, well, we had our first instrument when we were 8, but our dad had a euphonium at home, so I'm sure earlier than that he would teach us how to just play the low B flat and fingerings for different notes. But we had our own instrument when we were 8. We progressed into the local community band, and then we took an audition for the county or state bands, if you like, which we got into that. And we also became principal euphoniums of they have a national youth brass band of Great Britain, and we were in that as well, which was good fun. When we left school, we are not academic people. We're just euphonium players. When we left school at the age of 15, jobs were very difficult to get, especially when you didn't have many qualifications. And so we both did engineering apprenticeships. I am a 4-year apprentice trained fitter and turner, which qualifies me to work lathes and drilling machines, milling machines, all of the heavy industry stuff. Nicholas also did the same apprenticeship when he left school, and so for a long time we were doing proper jobs, if you like, in engineering, clocking on at 7:30 and clocking off at 4:30. We lived in Wales. We are Welsh, and we lived in Wales. I think the recession of the mid-70s hit Wales before it hit any other part of Britain, and so we were forced to look for other jobs. And because we were tradesmen, apprentice trained, we looked to the north of England, which is where all the very best bands are. Now these bands, as Nicholas has already told you, are sponsored by industry. There's the Black Dyke Mills Band, the Grindthorpe Colliery Band, Forden's Motorworks bands. A lot of these bands are sponsored by industry. So of course, if they can get a good solo euphonium player from down Wales, they can also give them a job in the factory, because we were qualified to work in the factory. And so that's how we first made our move to the north of England. I first moved to the Hammond Sauceworks band, Ketchup. And so I was a maintenance engineer in the ketchup factory, and I used to play for their band. Nicholas first went to the Grindthorpe Colliery Band, and so Nicholas worked about 1 mile underground for about 3 years in the coal mines. And it was only as we were playing in these better bands, the Hammond Saucework Band and the Grindthorpe Colliery bands, that we were beginning to make a bit of a name for ourselves as soloists within those bands, because those bands do about 50 or else 60 concerts a year. And
in 1984, in London, they have the National Brass Band Championships, and it was the idea of Boozy and Hawkes musical instruments to bring us both together to play some duets. And we thought that was a really good idea. And then we suddenly thought, well, we don't have any music to actually do this. So
Maybe we should point out before you go any further. You see, a lot of them will be thinking that we're either twins or that I'm the younger brother.
You must be joking.
There is actually there is actually 5 years between us, and believe it or not, I am the oldest one.
They believe it.
And so, and so when I was 15, he was only 10. Who wants to play with a little brother when they're 10? So we didn't actually get to play together in our childhood as such.
No. So that was a good point to mention about the age. So at this point, Boozy and Hawks decided that they would commission a piece of music, and of course, it could be none other than the Carnival of Venice, which we're going to play tonight in the concert. And at this point, we suddenly thought, well, that was all going to be good, and it was going to be where? And they said, well, in the Royal Albert Hall, London. So we started to think, this is our debut in the Royal Albert Hall. And we were waiting in a little tunnel before you go onto the stage.
You should explain the shape of the building.
Yeah. Well, the building, if people don't know, is round, very round, and it has about 8 tiers and a dome on the top. So the only way to get onto the stage is a very small tunnel. We went up back to back. We couldn't go inside the side.
You start walking up the tunnel and you can only see 6 people. Well, that's fine.
No problem. But then the next step, you could see 1,000. And then the next one, you could see about 5,000. And when you got to the top, suddenly we started to think there was 8,000 people in on our debut. And when we played this Carnival of Venice, it was made even more special because they invited our father to come and conduct a piece of music called Softly As I Leave You. And it was made even more special to ourselves and our hearts, really, because unfortunately our father died shortly after it. So it was the only job that he actually saw us do together, and that was the first job that we did.
Yeah, I think that was Softly As I Leave You, which is a slow piece. As we've gone round so far, especially meeting a lot of the younger musicians in America, because there isn't this tradition of older, like dads and granddads and just mature community bands passing it on to the young ones. Because the old ones know the game. They know that it doesn't matter how many notes you play, it doesn't matter how fast you play, or how low or how high. What really counts is the sound quality and the musicality that comes from the heart. Now, our young players that come through the system that we came through are continually being told that all the time. Don't worry about the speed, get the sound right. But of course, when we've gone around a lot of the schools that haven't got anybody to look up to, except the older lads in the school, which are real. They think it's great to scream top notes and to whiz through the Arbentutor and things. So I think sometimes they get the wrong concept. What I'm trying to get at is that the next piece we're going to play is a piece by Sir Edward Elgar, typical English piece, and it was written around about the same time that, Jeff, you were talking about Chanson du Matin. But this one's called A Salut d'Amour, and what we're trying to get across is the actual singing quality of the instrument, the phrasing, the start of the note, the finish of the note. You know, if we analysed this and talked about slow playing, we would be here until next week. But hopefully we could play this 2-minute piece and you will derive from it what you will.
funny part of that piece is when you actually look at the music that we played, because that piece only got done for us really, or when we did it, was when we was in Tokyo last year, and the people who took us out said we wanted a really typical English piece. So they said, you know, you'll put it on for tonight. And he just walked away. So Bob and I went to the room and we realised we didn't have no manuscript. So we were stopping in the Capital Tokyo Hotel. So we got their paper and drew some lines across. And then we just played it.
I played the tune, and Nicholas made up the accompaniment to it, and we were writing it down. So, that's our version of Elgar. Good. Well, obviously, we're not going to be here all day. We've got a big concert tonight. But what we would like to impart on you is some of our ideas on playing. And I honestly, we're not going to be technical. We don't believe in all the technical jargon. Although a lot of the technical jargon is correct, it doesn't apply. You know, when you go buy a motor car, you're not too bothered how the valves work and how the pistons go up and down and what lubricant to use and all the rest of it. You just want to know how to drive the thing. And so we're going to talk about breathing, but we're not going to talk about the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm and all the lower abdomen and all the rest of the stuff. We're going to give you three hints or tips, should I say, on the way we do it. There's three things. When you breathe in, to breathe as relaxed as you possibly can, to make your body really relaxed. So you breathe in. You don't lift your shoulders or your upper chest too much, not at all if you can help it, and to breathe as low as you possibly can. Just those three things. Breathe in as relaxed as you can, don't lift your chest, and breathe as low as you possibly can. And if you think of those three things, well, that's the way we do it anyway. And that would suffice.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things, as Bob said, you could bring into this, but time has a better way of spending. And a favourite question that's often asked is what exercise you can actually use to actually improve your breathing. Some exercises that we do, there might be what you already do. But certainly when I'm walking to work or to college or whatever, I might actually just walk and breathe in over 5 paces. So I go, being conscious about always keep my shoulders down and breathing always from the bottom. Then over the next 5 footsteps, because you won't be talking, you actually breathe out and make sure that you actually do make a slight noise when you actually do this, because then you know whether you're cheating or not. It's as simple as that. So you actually doing it.
Because when you analyse what Nicholas is doing, all he is doing, because everybody says, you know, well, we all breathe anyway, we're born breathing. All he's doing is controlling his breath. Any exercise which controls the breath, like that one, and of course you can increase the steps to 5, increase it to 10, until in the end you completely pass out. Try and control your breath. Other exercises I know that Nicholas is going to mention is holding a piece of paper at arm's length, and just the idea is to try and keep the paper at a fixed angle. Again, all you're doing is controlling the breath. It's not just breathing; it's controlling the breath. So something. My father actually he told us to do this one, and
we don't advocate this for children.
He used to do it with a candle. He used to have the candle lit, and he'd bend the flame back, and then let it come back up again. And if he blew the candle out, then obviously he didn't do it right. As a child, he would never let me play with fire. So
if you see me after, I'll tell you why.
So that was one. You know, we have.
Can I say the one that I actually think is very bad, and it's what most people do as a breath exercise, which is they tend to think, I've got to go longer. So they go, and they just hold the breath in, and after they've gone to 20 seconds on their watch, they go,
and I think that's practicing breath control, and it really isn't.
That's just holding your breath, because it's going to bring us into in a second on about production. But what tends to happen if you do that type of exercise is when you do take your breath, even though it might be relaxed, when you start to play the note, you get a big bang on it. Instead of breathing out, getting a nice, soft, dark production, you get a do, and it's only because you're keeping all the air all blocked up, and it's because most of the time that's the type of breathing exercise that you might do.
We've actually got to brush over a lot of the breathing, but I mean, it's suffice to say that both Nick and I and a lot of other brass instrumentalists feel that if you take brass playing as a whole, 90% of getting it right is breathing correctly. 90% of really getting things, good tone, good intonation, good phrase control. All of this comes down, good range, good pedal tones. It's all about the breath. So although we're skipping over it, really make a point that a big percentage of brass playing is getting the breathing sorted out. Nicholas just touched on production there. Now that these two must be together. They are very much aligned. And it's something that came home to me was when I travelled on my band coach, because we do about 50 concerts a year. And I'm unfortunate enough to sit behind the two trombone players that they continually talk about golf all the time. Now, I don't play the game, and I'm not really that bothered. It seems to me it's something that spoils a good walk. But,
Is there any golfers in, by the way?
but they play golf, and they are all the time talking about the swing. Okay, so now I don't know anything about golf, but I'm pretty good on the swing now. I think really. So they tell me that you've got to keep your arms straight, keep your eye on the ball, legs just a little bit apart, and then they talk about the upstroke for about half an hour. And then they talk about the follow through. Always, you got to follow through. Don't stop. Just follow through, and don't stop at the top. Now that's a very important point. But that's my analogy really. We're talking about breathing in, okay, taking the breath, and production. The upstroke and the follow through. You don't as a golfer take it upstroke and then check the book to check that it's okay. So far it's okay. Yeah, right. Now follow through. That's a waste of time. What you've got to do is it's got to be one continual motion. Same with a brass play. You breathe and you play. If you get a big hang up about taking a breath and you think, right, don't lift the chest, okay. Yeah, that's right. You've got to do it together. Nicholas will just breathe in rhythmically, we call it.
Definitely, and we think it's a major part of an ensemble playing actually tighter, or a band playing tighter, or a concert band, any ensemble. Because what we're talking about is, say, if it's a slow measures, it would be 1, 2, and we would go...
Breathe and play.
And so you're not keeping anything choked up at all. Now, I'm not trying to say that you can't take more breath in over the whole of the actual vowel measure. Because you can go, a 1 and you're still breathing in all the time, but then you just letting it out.
You certainly don't hold back. You don't take your breath, wait and explode. That's a big thing.
Whenever it's possible, we actually breathe on the upbeat. So again, on this one it'd be 1, 2, 3. Just try it for me. Just try this one for me. Here we go. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. But when you do it, try not to go.
Yeah, but some of these guys are macho, man.
It's not good. It's not good doing that because you don't see many brass players walking around like that, do you? And it's not good because that's just all in your chest. And we've said that you want to breathe from down here. It's actually really good. A story that Bob has said quite a few times when a conductor at his band, which was a Major Peter Parks, and he just couldn't get the band to play actually together. This damn percussionist, drummers we call them, and they just wouldn't come in together. They wouldn't come in with the band. So he just told him, just breathe with the band. And so the percussionist was going to go, and it worked first time. It worked first time. In England, when I was playing a Grindthorpe band, we played an Ool program in a competition without a conductor. And that 26 people had to just watch out for the cue of somebody just going, and we had 26 that started immaculately together every single time.
Well, I'm sure all of you know that one of the best ways to improve your playing generally is to play in a quintet or a quartet or a duet, so that you get a real feel for the breath. And you don't need that conductor. You need a conductor when you're a long way away in an orchestra or a band. But there's nothing better than actually, these things on the sides of our heads, they're not just for hanging the glasses on. To listen really carefully, listen to the two sides of the band.
I mean, as we said, we haven't got a great deal of time to go into any of these subjects, but I mean, needless to say that any subject that we're actually talking about, that somebody would like to ask about later on, then there will be time for some questions. I'd like to bring up the point now about vibrato, because I'm sure it's one that you're ticking away in your minds at the moment to ask about. We have our view on the vibrato, and that's simply that we think of the euphonium as a singing instrument. And if you think of a vocalist, they sing with a lovely vibrato. And if you was going to actually put it against an orchestral instrument, then we think it would probably be a cello. Most of the pieces that at the moment that the euphonium plays, or that we are playing at the moment, are transcriptions. And as that one was, that Salut de Mort was a song. So the vibrato that we would use is of a vocal nature. If we was to play something, the Sanson Swan, the cellist piece, then again you would not see a cello just sitting there, just doing no vibrato.
But then again, if we were playing a transcription of a French horn piece, classical French horn or classical trumpet, then we would try. What we're trying to say is that what we try to do is look at the music that's been written, what it was written for, and try to copy the very best at that. We are certainly not black and white. We certainly aren't, you must play with vibrato or you must play without vibrato. We think we're going to talk a little bit about double tonguing, triple tonguing, legato tonguing, staccato tonguing. And vibrato is just another tool. Just like all of those facets of playing, vibrato is just another tool. So that when it's required, you play with vibrato. And when it isn't required, then you don't. And that is your choice. All I'm saying is, don't you be black and white either. Or don't be snobbish about, if the orchestral tuba plays straight, then the euphonium should always play straight. Have an open mind about it. This is a completely different animal to the tuba. It's a completely different animal to the trombone. And it certainly is a different animal to the French horn. But a lot of the teaching, in not just in this country, but all over the place, you get euphonium players being taught by classical trombone players that don't appreciate that this instrument is an instrument on its own. And can play like the classical trombone, if you want, but it can also play like a traditional euphonium, like a cello, or like the human voice.
Brings us on to now. We do a lot of...
Do you want to just talk slightly about the vowels you use for...
Oh yeah, go on.
So we haven't got time to talk about all the double tonguing and triple tonguing stuff, but we will say that in a lot of books, especially for cornet tutors, they say to use the production ta and ka. Ta if it's single tonguing, ta 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 ta, or if it's double tonguing, ta ka ta ka ta ka ta ka ta ka ta ka ta, triple tonguing, ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta 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 ta. Now we always use, and I'm sure it's fairly general amongst lower brass, to use da and ga instead. It gives more air through the instrument. More air through the instrument gives more sound. So if we were tonguing a single tongue, we'd go da 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 da, or da ga da ga da ga da ga da ga da, or da 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 da. It's much smoother for the euphonium and I think for the tuba also.
It gets less technique out, because using that other way, it is technique that comes out of the bell rather than actual sound. The other system gives more sound to the actual vowels that you're actually using.
Takes the tongue away, allows more air to go through the instrument. And after all said and done, this is just a series of pipes. It's a tool, if you like, works on air. It's pneumatic. If you don't blow air through it, it's not going to work.
You don't blow it, it don't go.
Absolutely.
Bring us on to a little course that I was just going to mention about. That most of our days now seem to be spent either performing with our bands or more actually performing as duets. Recently we've just come back from Japan and Norway, Germany, Belgium, Holland, most of the European countries, and most of the places we go to, they like to know how we actually play the solos, how we actually present them, how we chose them, how don't we get as nervous, or how we don't show our nerves to you. So this is a little course that we've put together to actually try and show this.
We've subtitled this soloist course as the 4 P's, because each title begins with a P. The first one is picking the right solo. We had to say picking because we wanted to use 4 P's. But it's really choosing the right solo, right? Choosing the right solo, and then preparing it, and then performing it, and then the actual presentation of it on the actual day. Maybe you just want to start off with how we would actually choose the right piece. It's not as simple as you think.
It should be simple. This should be very simple. But the many times when we listen to a recital, and you actually listen to a performer actually performing something that he actually is playing, is just because he's working on a triple tonguing, he plays a triple tongue polka, which he doesn't play very well. So don't play a piece of music that you know you're not as good at.
Again, a little cliche that our father used to use to us was, only perform the things that you're good at. Practice the other ones, but only perform your strong points. Practice your weak points. And it's good advice. Just because you heard a super sort of tuba player on the wireless playing some triple tongue in Carnival of Venice, just like Michael Lind can play it, doesn't mean to say that if you get the music and you're really enthusiastic about this piece, that is the best piece for you to play.
And another thing to remember when you are choosing your solos is not to overestimate one's talent. It's always different when you perform it. If your top note is a high B flat, then you want to make sure that you can play a high C. Because if that's your top of your range, when you're under pressure, when you play in a recital or whatever, your range comes down a little. Your breathing doesn't go as far. I mean, those sort of things that you should remember, so don't overestimate your actual talent.
So once you've chosen the right piece, then it comes down to preparing it. Now, sometimes this preparation can be somewhat fraught, because I know when I've been preparing a piece and I've said to somebody, what do you think of this? They've said to me, yeah, it's okay, but I think you're rushing a little bit there. Rushing? Me? And you don't believe, even if you say, oh, right, thanks very much, I'm not rushing. You know, you don't believe it. Or if a conductor says to you, you're out of tune, you're a bit sharp on that note. Yeah, okay, I'm not. You don't believe it. Don't believe it.
But and the point that Bob made on the last class, which was very true, that in actual fact, when somebody says that to you, you might say, yeah, okay, but then you just go to your next friend and say, what do you think to it? And as long as he says that was good, you think, well, he was rubbish.
You just go around looking for opinions until you find somebody that agrees with you. That's what tends to happen. So in preparation, it's always a good idea to record yourself, because the recorder doesn't tell any lies. You know, as much as you might want to speed it up sometimes or slow it down or bring the pitch of it down or up, it doesn't tell any lies. And if you're rushing, it'll tell you it's rushing, because usually you're your best critic. Record yourself.
And still on about when you're actually preparing the solo, if you are going to play a piece of music that is already recorded, then there is nothing wrong with actually listening to that recording and trying to learn something from it. Particularly if you are going to do, I mentioned, the Sanson Swan, which is very popular on the euphonium, then perhaps don't listen to another euphonium player on it. Listen to the original instrument that it was actually made for. Actually listen to that and then find out where you should be phrasing and not where you've got a phrase.
One thing that you must take into account when you're preparing a solo is nerves. Now, it's a bit of a taboo subject, really. None of us likes to talk about it too much. But it's there. It's a fact of life, and you've got to do something about it. Now, this next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about what I do, what me and Nicholas does. Now, you can take it with a pinch of salt if you want. I'm not particularly bothered. But this is the truth. This is exactly what I do. Nicholas will tell you a little bit about it first. About the time you found me at home.
Yeah. I was once walking to Bob's house, and I was just coming up to the window, up the path, and that's all I could see was this man running up and down the stairs. What was he doing? You know, so by the time I reached and came into the house, he was sat in front of this big, huge coal fire, the fire roasting out, and he had a big overcoat on. And he was sat in front of the fire playing his euphonium, sweating, streaming. I said, what are you doing this for?
See, the thing is, I believe that in our mind we have two people, one pessimistic chap and one very optimistic. The optimistic one says, you know, when you're on stage and you fancy going for that top E flat, he says, yeah, go for it. That's the good guy. Now the pessimistic fella is the one that says, hey, you've never played with all these lights. You've never played this piece with your heart pounding so much that you think it's going to bust your shirt. You've never played this piece when your mouth is so dry that it feels like, I don't know, something terrible, right? So what you've got to do is try and convince the optimistic guy that he is right. You've got to put that pessimistic chap down. You've got to put him down. So what I was doing when Nicholas caught me that time was I was practicing. I simulated the conditions. I simulated the fact that probably I would be sweating a lot when I played my solo. Probably my heart would be pounding, and probably I would be quite dry. So what I did, I sucked on a lemon, then I put an overcoat on and got myself really sweating, and I ran up and down the stairs once or twice, and my heart was really pumping. And you know, I still played my solo okay. And so when I got to the venue, when I got to the concert, and this pessimistic chap saying, "Ooh, you're going to mess it up tonight, you've never played with all these lights before, you've never played," the optimistic chap can say, "Yeah, well, it's no problem, we've done it like this before. I've done it at least 9 or 10 times like this before, and it is absolutely no problem." Now, as I say, you might think that's a load of rubbish. We've actually built up a reputation in England of specialising in, especially students that have a problem getting through the recital. And it really just needs a confidence boost. This type of thing. You don't have to do it if you don't want, but I tell you, when the chips are down, if you've nothing else to try it. I tell you, it works.
And you know, even when you look at each other now, because you should, look at your next door neighbour and your person who's sat next to you, and you know that those things do happen. And it's only when you're honest can you put them right.
And if you practice those situations, then it isn't a worry anymore. The first thing that happens is that heart starts pumping. That is the big problem. If you can keep that down, controlled breaths, they're good as well. So we've talked about preparedness, so we've talked about helping a little bit with nerves. What we're coming to now is the presentation, the actual stage presentation. We haven't got an awful lot of time, so maybe we can mimic this one out.
Yeah, it's always good.
Are you going to do it?
No, I'm not. No, you're a better actor than me. I want you to imagine these two players that Bob's going to do now are actually exactly the same standard. They can play top Zs, they can play super low notes. They're exactly the same standard. But you tell me which one looks the best. I'm going to introduce Bob twice, and let's see him on the first time. So we're going to give a very warm welcome to play Rule Britannia to Robert Childs.
I'm looking at the clock because my teacher told me to look at something at the back of the hall, right?
Water. I'm the conductor now. Ready?
And they do this. Now you're laughing, but you know it happens. You've been there. I've been there. Okay? Maybe not as much as that, but you've been there and I've been there. And it's not a very nice place to be. When you don't know what to do with yourself, you feel every little twitch you do, everybody's looking at you, right? So this, don't forget, he said that the two players that's going to be introduced are exactly the same quality, they're exactly the same players, there's no musical difference between them. It's just a presentation.
Now this one. So we're going to do exactly the same, but to give a very warm welcome to play Rule Britannia to Robert Childs.
And then I'll be ready. I'll probably turn to the conductor and say, "We're ready." And off we go. Now the two players you've just watched are exactly the same. Say the second one makes a little mistake. What are you going to say? "Ah, he's just having a bit of a bad day." If the first one made a mistake, you'd say, "Well, I think he's rubbish anyway." So it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Now it's a big percentage of playing the solo is actually presenting it. And if you present it in a good manner and be absolutely professional, as much right down to cleaning the shoes, cleaning the instrument, looking smart as possibly you can. All of these things go a long way, an awful long way.
That really wraps up the soloist course.
Yep.
We're going to play a piece of music now, and then after it, if you've got any questions, we'd like to answer them for you. As we said, in England, the brass band tradition goes back a long way. 2 years ago, we have a band magazine that celebrated its centenary, which is called the British Bandsman. It held a concert to commemorate this. This is called the Concert of the Century. And once again, we said to them we needed a piece of music to be commissioned. So they commissioned a Scottish composer to write a piece of music. In the piece of music, he decided to write with a little reflection to where our origins, which are Welsh. So in there is a little tune called Men of Harlech. Because he was the British bandsman, the best British tune that he could possibly write was, of course, Rule Britannia. And we put it together with a Yorkshire English band. So it's entitled Brilliante by Peter Graham.
Before, I remember that I didn't tell you how we overcome dryness in a concert situation. We've got a glass. I do suffer from getting dry quite a bit, so does Nick, and especially these sort of lights. What I do is I have a piece of elastic here, and I just put a sponge inside there. And in a performance, if I'm feeling a bit dry, I can just have a slurp at the sponge, and nobody knows about it. And anyway, if they did, I don't care. the thing is, when the sponge is there, I don't usually go dry anyway.
No.
The reason why I'm got a sponge, in there today, is that I filled my case full of cassettes and CDs, and so there wasn't room for the sponge. So business comes first. And if any of you are running away with the idea that all we do is arrangements and these traditional euphonium solos, they are what works for us in a recital situation. We can actually play right through from beginning to end. You notice we were filling in all the band parts there as well. We've just actually made a record called Euphonium Music, which is all classical euphonium, original euphonium music. It has euphonium music on it by Brian Bowen, American composer, and it's got James Kerner Rhapsody, Denzel Stevens Rhapsody, an English composer, Philip Spark Fantasy. So it's all full of. We are very much pioneering new euphonium music. It was just one of those things that we didn't have the opportunity to rehearse with the piano today, as we would have showed that side of it. But we very much think that for the euphonium to be taken seriously in the modern day, then we've got to find good composers to write for it and push those works. Maybe some questions now.
Yeah, it's a good time for any questions if anybody would like to ask.
Don't be shy now.
Do you have the Pearl Fishers duet in your repertoire?
We
do. I could tell you the story. It was supposed to be on this afternoon.
We'll give it away.
But we were in Dallas doing a recital, and Bob had played a euphonium solo called Grandfather's Clock. On the back of Grandfather's Clock is the Pearl Fishers duet. A young student came out of the audience and said that he had loved the Grandfather's Clock and he'd been trying to get it for some, I don't know, he'd just never seen it in America. And Bob said, hey, have that one. Hence, we haven't got the Pearl Fishers anymore. So, no, we haven't got it. We haven't got it with us. It is actually on the CD. It is on the CD. Any other questions?
When will the CD out yet?
Sorry?
Is the record out yet?
Yeah, it is, but it's not widely distributed in America. In fact, it's not distributed at all at the moment. What we're going to do is put it in the TUBA journal, and then I suppose it'll get to the people it really counts.
We have got, I think,
12.
something like about 12 CDs left. So if anybody would like one, then it's a good time as any to say that if you'd like to get them after the recital, then we'd only be too willing.
Also, there's some repertoire books that we edited there as well, if you'd like to have a look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Since both of you are teachers, what is the sort of common course of methods that you would have the students go through?
The book that we certainly do use in Britain a lot is the Arbon. As far as exercises go, we adapt what we do as a euphonium, as we said about the double and the triple tonguing, but we actually do use a lot of the exercises out of the Arbon tutor.
And the Gatti is a good book.
Yeah.
And then we use the French own Coprach book, because that really expands the instrument, the bassoon.
And from a lip flexibility, we use the Charles Collins lip flexibility book.
Oh, there's a Swiss book called, well, I don't know what it's called, but it's by Rolf Quinku, trumpet player. It's very good for expanding the register.
Okay.
Do you all recommend the melodious H's for trouble or repairs?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Say again?
My question is, do you all recommend the book, I think it's called the melodious H's for euphonium by Rocher? I think it's based on Mark.
I'm sorry, I don't know that book.
Don't know it.
It's obviously not available in England, and we haven't been fortunate enough to see it while we've been in America.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell us about your instruments.
Well, this is the best and sovereign euphonium. It's the 967. Buchenholz make two professional models like this. The one is a 968, and this is the 967. The difference, the 967 has the larger bell and has the larger mouthpipe going in. Obviously, the 968 has a small mouthpipe or medium bow, small bell, but both have the short valve action, which none of the other actual euphoniums have, whether it be Wilson, Yamaha. None of them have a shorter valve
Or
action.
even the old Bessons.
Yeah, no. And they've got nylon underneath, which I'll gladly show you later on, which make them the quietest valves going around. It would be impossible to play some of the fast things that we play
Well, maybe we could play this one to finish off
Yeah.
later.
with the actual long valve action. Okay.
They come in lacquer and silver plate, and we really don't see much difference in either. I think the mouthpiece that you play on it makes more of a difference to the sound than the lacquer or the silver plate.
Any other questions?
I would like to know more about picking the proper mouthpiece in relationship to the size of the mouth, shape of the mouth, and what you're aiming for as tonal production and so forth.
Well, the Besson instrument comes with a standard Dennis Wick number 4 mouthpiece. Now, this mouthpiece was used in the development of this instrument, and so this mouthpiece works better with this instrument than any other mouthpiece. The intonation is better with this mouthpiece than any other mouthpiece. But I got to admit, if I have a student that finds a problem getting the eye register with this mouthpiece, then I'll, having gone through all the breathing process and everything else, if it really does come down to the mouthpiece, then I'll give them a number 5 or even a number 6. If they don't have a very good low register, but a very good high register, then I'll give them a number 3. That's the criteria I work to, which is very, very simple.
Okay. And I mean, again, if there's anything else you'd like to know about it, then we're glad to have a chat after.
Any other questions?
If you were talking about the running up down the stairs with a coach, getting it back to when you're performing, like, is this, I'm a tuba player, but when I do a recital or audition, I can play and listen to it. Well, it sounds okay, it's never perfect, but boy, I sit out there in front of everybody and play, and it's just like, really, I'm better than this. I mean, should I try the same thing with that?
I would. Well, you've got nothing to lose by trying it, have you?
That's right. But like I said, really, it's really very funny and everything. But really, you've got to have a try of it because, I mean, agreed, we're with friends now. But in actual fact, when you're in a situation where you have 80,000 bands in Britain, you have a lot of fans that like you playing. But don't forget,
There's a lot of euphonium players queuing up for your job.
So, any other questions, please?
In your travels on planes, do you check your horns through? And if you do, have you had any problems with them?
I'll tell you-
Only one time.
Sorry, well, I was just going to say, well, these instruments are good instruments, but I think if I got hung up about it, then I wouldn't sleep. And so, quite frankly, we put them in you see those cases, the like sort of plastic cases, they're moulded, and they do bounce quite well without damaging the instrument. So we just put the euphoniums in the belly, and so far on all our travels, we've never damaged an instrument. We've lost them once or twice, but we've never damaged them. That's what you're going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only time we've ever lost them was when we went to Dayton, Ohio, and we were waiting on the conveyor belt, and my case came out, and then Bob's case came out, and Bob's instrument, and my instrument wasn't there. And we had a concert at 7 o'clock at night. Luckily, it did arrive half an hour before the concert. But to answer the question that I'm sure a lot of people might be thinking about these actual instruments that we play, they are totally standard instruments, and in fact, we
If anybody wanted to buy it now, you could have it.
yeah, because in fact that's what we did do when we went to Japan. A very good euphonium player over there said, well, if I could get an instrument like yours, I'd buy it. So I gave him mine.
And we were quite confident that we would get another one just as good back in England.
Any other questions? This is actually the last question.
I wanted to ask you about the future of your recitals using the double bells, euphoniums.
Right. This is Moses. Now we met yesterday when we were waiting for the car in the hotel across the road, and he was a good friend. He said, "Come on," he said, "don't walk across. Come across with us." So we actually went in totally the wrong car, totally the wrong place, but Moses helped us all the time. Go on, you answer it.
Well, I tell you, we were across at Jeff Howard's house with a beautiful meal. His wife's a wonderful cook, and Jeff is also a wonderful barman. And he was pouring us out. We were trying the different American beers, comparing them with the German beers, and all the time it was going on, we were looking at a video of, well, our idol on the double bell euphonium, unfortunately passed away now, Ashley Alexandra. And if I could play the double bell as good as him, then I would demonstrate it. And until I can, I'm not going to try.
But I must say that we have now got 2 double barrel euphoniums, and they're in absolutely immaculate condition. They look beautiful.
Is that guy here somewhere?
Is the gentleman when we were in Columbus, Ohio, Bob had a double barrel euphonium, and a gentleman came and said, "Well, I've got one. If you want it, I'll sort something out for you." And he gave me the double barrel euphonium. So we have actually got 2 now.
And we've commissioned a piece for it as well, but it's a bit funny, and it's a bit of a comedy, bit of dialogue between the two of us.
But we want to use it.
We would like to use it seriously, yeah.
But it goes back to the choosing the solo. Remember, you've got to actually play the pieces that you play well.
Any questions? Any other questions before we wrap it up?
What pint of beer do you recommend when we visit in?
Well, I can sum this one up even better. Ones that you buy for us.
That's one of the things about these recitals, and sometimes you hold us in high esteem and you feel you can't talk to us or anything like that. After the recital, or certainly after the concert tonight, if you feel like coming up to us and say, "Hey, what do you want to drink?" that's fine.
We'd like to finish off our recital tonight with a piece of music that we're going to play in the concert tonight, which we hope that everybody will be able to come to. It's a piece that Paganini made famous. It's a piece that he finished off his recitals. It has some, how many notes?
1,253.
Notes in 90 seconds. We hope you've enjoyed the recital. We hope that you've gained something from it. And if there's any help that we can actually give you after the recital, then by all means come to us, and any assistance we can do, we certainly will. And from Bob and I, we'd like to say, Viva la Euphonium.
Thank you.